Well, hi everyone. This is Denise from Refresh Her, and I thought we would do something kind of different today for my blog post for Freshen Up Friday, and that is to do a little video about how to make a pie crust. I have a lot of people tell me that it's just too hard for them to even try to make one, so they buy a store-bought, and while those are fairly good, there's really nothing better than a homemade crust. And so I thought I would just try to do a little video today just to show you really how simple it can be and show you maybe a few techniques that might be able to simplify the process for you. So let me get it to the other side of my counter here and tell you first of all that it just requires a few simple ingredients. You use flour, and I have 2 cups of flour and a teaspoon of salt, and this will make either a double crusted pie or 2 single crusts, and I'm getting ready to make a strawberry pie, so this will make 2 crusts for 2 different strawberry pies. I use Crisco shortening. To me, it's just the best. It doesn't have the real vegetable taste to it. It makes the crust nice and fluffy. And I use 3/4 of a cup of Crisco to the 2 cups of flour. And then another really important element to a good crust is ice water. I know a lot of people even refrigerate the Crisco so it's nice and cold, but you need good cold water so that it will make the pastry really fluffy and flaky. And the first thing I do is take my pastry blender, or you can use a fork, and just blend together the flour and the salt together, and so that's just incorporated. And then I'm simply just going to take my spatula and get the Crisco worked into the flour. And they say you want it the consistency of like cornmeal or of small peas. I just, after a while, you can just kind of tell by looking at it that you've put it in enough, you've blended it in enough. But kind of cover the Crisco with a little bit of flour so it won't stick to your utensil. And then just start working at it. And I always just kind of take my spatula and just kind of have to kind of clean it off of the pastry blender as it just is beginning to get blended into there. It can get a little sticky sometimes. And really, probably within 10 or 15 minutes you can have 2 pie crusts done, which is less time than it takes you to go to the grocery store and buy one, and saves you the gas money too. So if you can do this, and really just even making up several in one day and putting them in the freezer, they freeze beautifully, and then it's just ready, and all you need to do is take it out and make your filling for it. It really makes it so convenient to have them on hand. I try to always keep one in the freezer so that I can make a quick dessert if I need to. But you see what I'm doing is just every now and then just kind of scrape the shortening off of the pastry blender or your forks and blend it in. I'll show you the consistency of it when I get it finished here so you know what to look for. Just kind of keep turning your bowl so that the shortening gets into all of the flour and gets good and incorporated. Shortening is what makes it flaky, obviously. Some people use butter, or even the butter flavored Crisco is good as well. It's looking pretty good. The one thing that I don't measure is my water, and you're going to add enough liquid just so that it's going to be able to stick together. But I just keep it sitting there so it's getting nice and cold while I'm doing this part. Now let me bring the bowl over there to the camera so you can see what this looks like. You can get a good look. See what how it's really, you can see little tiny pieces of the flour. That's kind of where they give it the little cornmeal texture, or like little tiny peas, I guess. But it looks fairly good. So now I won't need this anymore, and I'll just add the water now and blend it in with my spatula. Now you don't want to let any of the ice cubes fall into the dough mixture at all, so I just kind of hold my spatula up there, and basically I probably just now added about a third a cup of water. It's pretty much close. As much shortening as you put in is about how much water you're going to add, but you just want to add enough that it all sticks together nicely. You don't want it too dry where it's going to crack and crumble. And really this is, maybe I'm not right about that because it's looking pretty good. And really the more shortening you add, the less water you will need. So if you like a real short crust, my mom makes a terrific pie crust and she adds lots of shortening, which makes it so yummy. But you don't need as much water if you have more shortening. And right there, I mean, you can tell the dough has come together into a little ball. So it's ready now. So how long did that take? About 5 minutes? Now let me move these things off of my counter so I can roll it out. And I think some folks have the hardest time with the rolling part. But as long as you get your board well floured, you shouldn't have a problem. Unless you've added too much water and it's just really short, that can present a little trouble. And what I'm going to do is just spread a little bit of flour out here, and you really can't have too much. It'd be better for it to have a little too much flour and not stick than for you to skimp on the flour and it stick to the board and then you can't get it out. That's no fun. And all I'm going to do is just make a ball out of it, and then I'm just going to cut it in half and set this half aside. Now, you can see my board is nicely floured. I'll never forget one time watching a lady in our church. She was an older woman who made really good pie dough. I was a young wife, and I watched her do this with one arm in a cast. And she rolled it out, and she made a little disc like this, and then she rolled the whole pie crust out, and I thought, if she can do it one-handed, surely I can do it with two. So watching her, watching my mom. But if you get in it, roll into a little disc like that, obviously you've already got your circle kind of started. So then you just begin to roll it out and just go in each direction to be able to continue to make the circle. And then I like to just keep spinning it so I'm assured that it's not sticking to my board. Because like I said, it's no fun to have a pretty pie crust all made and then it won't come up off of your board. But just go in each direction. You're going to go around and then come back towards yourself. Just keep going in a circle, and then every now and then just set it down and kind of turn it a little bit. Make sure there's flour up underneath it. But it's just kind of an assurance that it's not sticking. And you want it a little bit bigger than the bottom of your pie plate, obviously, because it needs to be able to come up to the sides of your pie plate. And that looks like a pretty good size. Now, one good thing to do is just to take the rolling pin and set it down at the edge of the pie crust, and then bring the pie crust just gently up over it. I'm not going to wrap it real tight, but I'm just going to kind of roll it around here so it will lift up. And we'll take this and even just set it in the flour, and now my pie dough is hanging over the edge of the rolling pin, and then I just kind of unroll it into the dish. It's a little lopsided, so I'm going to try to scoot it over a little without it ripping. But you don't want to roll it so thin that if you have to move it that it cracks. But you can see, I mean, it looks pretty sloppy right now, but it's in there and it's all in one piece, so that's a blessing. Now what I do is just let the edges hang over just a little bit, and you're obviously going to have to crimp it a little and make an edge, and we need to get rid of this extra dough here. So let me just find a knife. And I like to leave a little bit to be able to kind of tuck under. I don't want it to be super thin at the edge of the pie pan. So I'll just cut it just a little below the edge. Okay, got it pretty good. Now what I do right here is I just kind of fold under the edge a little bit. Well, let me do a couple more and then I'll bring it over there so you can see a little better. I just fold it so it's not super thin, and then I have something that I can crimp. See, I've just kind of folded the edge. Here it's unfolded. Now I'm just going to take it and just turn it under just a little, and then just kind of lay it down on the edge of the pie pan. So let me finish doing that. And we're almost done with one whole pie crust. And as Barefoot Contessa would say, and how easy was that? And hopefully when we eat it, we can say, how good was that? And what I like to do then is just kind of press it and make that edge around here kind of flat, so that you could use a fork and you could just crimp the edges with a fork, or you can do a little pinch kind of a crimp, which is what I like to do. Now if I was going to freeze this, I would not crimp the edges. I would go ahead right now and cover it with saran wrap and foil, or if I have a bag, a plastic bag that this will fit inside of, I'll slide it in there, because just the moving around to the freezer and back will kind of mess up the pretty edge you've made. And when you get this in the freezer and bring it back out again, when it's thawed, just after 5 or 10 minutes or so, it will be ready for you then to crimp the edges. And what I like to do is, at kind of at an angle, I fold my index finger and my thumb and just kind of pinch it, and I do it at an angle like this, and then I'll put my thumb where my index finger had been. I'll bring this over there so you can see the edge, and it just makes a pretty edge. Just go around in a circle. You can see how it's looking. Let's see, get it right direction here. I'm doing it backward in the camera, so see how it's looking? So let's just keep going around. Now, because a strawberry pie has to go inside of a baked pie shell, I don't know if you've ever had this happen to you, but when you bake a pie shell empty like this, you put it in the oven and it tends to puff up and it shrinks in, and suddenly you go to look in the oven and you say, where did the pie crust go? But a simple solution to that is just to lay wax paper, or even foil would work, just in the bottom of it, and then lay dried beans, or if you have pie weights. I don't have any, so I just use some dried beans, and it just makes a weight for it and keeps it from puffing up. And about halfway through the baking time, I take that out, and then that allows the bottom of the crust then to be able to brown. And here's my finished pie shell. There we go. Now what I like to do is take a little bit of sugar and just sprinkle it around the edge before I stick it into the oven, and that makes a good dessert just right there by itself. And even these scraps that you cut off, these shouldn't go to waste either. These would make a great little treat. If you have small children, just let them, my girls used to do this when they were little, just take the scraps and they would roll them until they were practically green or brown. But just roll them out and then just cut them with a little cookie cutter, and then sprinkle cinnamon sugar on them. And when you're baking your pie shell, these will be ready in half the time the pie shell is. They have a little treat, cinnamon and sugar cookie. I hope that you'll try this and find out that homemade pie crusts are really good, and they're not really hard at all to make. You can do it if you'll try. And you know what? You can have a good pie. You can even freshen up your pie by making a homemade shell. So get in that kitchen and get busy. You can do it. I know you can. Thanks for stopping by today, and I look forward to seeing you in church Sunday. Be refreshed. Bye.